see them much. And so we have much. Everybody else is grandma and grandpa.
They call them Meemaw. Meemaw. I don't know where he came up with that. That's how every grandson.
Oh. My mom would leave from Austin. Austin named her Lee. And then us named Andy's mom Dee. So Lee and Dee. So Houston, you know, mom was very sick where we go. So yeah,
Special moment.
exactly. I know.
It'd be harder. Still feeling like in the afternoon, late in the afternoon. That's the last. Pretty much right after that, Morgan had it. Yeah.
We think Terry had it, but we didn't get it tested.
Well, and I didn't get tested either. Tommy did. So, well, you got it after me. If you had it, that's why I had it. Which is.
I heard a preaching to the choir, but it looks like the choir didn't show up.
Yeah. I'm trying to quiet down so we get started.
Well,
Oh.
Did you use smiles?
Yeah. Oh. Yes, I do. Yeah, let me go put them on there.
Yes, please, yes. It's Sunday morning. Usually I have this latest. Yeah, 2 weeks. It's work. Yes. You never thought. And one of those people like, she's not getting it. You will be. Sounds good. Okay.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm a little discombobulated today, a little cattywampus. Not sure why, but it is what it is. We will be in 32 today, and hopefully we'll finish all this unless one of you guys makes a really cool point and we go that direction. And I've offered this, I don't know, a couple of times over the last however many years that we've been doing this, that if there's a subject you want to study or a topic, a class, whatever it is, let me know, or you get what I find interesting, and we will go in that direction. So if there's something you think be cool, what I'm planning on doing is looking at the some conversations that Jesus has with the Jewish leadership, specifically the Pharisees, and maybe give us a little different picture of Jesus, depending upon what your picture is, and kind of study his responses, study how he handles the whole thing, and maybe give us some help as to how we deal with people, maybe belligerent situations, how Jesus dealt with them, and learn some lessons in that regard. But again, if you guys have some stuff you'd like to look at and study, let me know, or you can just text it to me. You can messenger it to me. You can call me. Just call me something nice, and we will go in that direction. All right, so Genesis chapter 32, and then we will get a little bit into 33. One of the things as I was studying this that I find very interesting is as we have Jacob's sons, the 12 sons, in my strange humor, we have the 12 sons, and then there's Dinah, which still cracks me up. And then she had Dinah. Anyway, it's like she gets 6 words literally, and then we just move on. And I don't know that there's much about Dinah after that. So Genesis 32 verse 1, we talked about this. Jacob started on his way, sees this angel, and when Jacob saw this is God's camp, or this is Elohim's camp. And so Jacob sends messengers ahead of him to see his brother Esau. And obviously, as we talked about, the last time he saw Esau, Esau was wanting to kill him because of this massive deception that happened. And so in at least Jacob's mind, Esau is still kind of there. How many of you guys, maybe there's somebody from, well, you guys may go to your high school reunions. I haven't been to one of mine, and in my brain, these 56-year-old people that I graduated with are still 18. Because I haven't seen them since I graduated. And so maybe for Jacob, the last time he saw them, he saw Esau, was 25 years ago, and Esau was not happy with him. He wanted to actually kill him. So he sends these 3 different phases toward Esau with all this stuff that he has. And in other words, he almost wants to empty his chamber, all of the things, the servants, the wealth that he has. and send waves of it to Esau to soften the blow so that when he gets to Esau, Esau won't kill him or his family. So the thing I found interesting is with these 12 sons, they're not 12 tribes of Israel yet. They're just dudes. They're just guys. Nothing has happened in terms of them being tribes. Of course, they don't have their own kids either yet. And so, I don't know. I just, because I think whenever, at least for me, whenever I think of Jacob and his sons, my brain automatically goes to the 12 tribes of Israel. And I hear their names and I think of tribes, but they're not there yet. They're just guys. Of course, we haven't even gotten to Joseph yet in terms of what happens to Joseph. So verse 6, after delivering this message that Jacob sends to Esau, the messengers return to Jacob and report, "We met your brother Esau. He is already on the way to meet you with an army of 400 men." And this is kind of part 2, where if we think someone's upset with us or we think there's an issue, for Jacob, he assumes that Esau is still angry with him. So he sends an army of 400 men. And I didn't look at this word army in the Hebrew, so I'm not exactly sure what that is. It could just be men. He sends 400 men to Jacob. So verse 7, Jacob is terrified at this news, and he divides up his household along with the flocks and herds and camels into the 2 groups. So what is Jacob thinking here? Why divide up his household?
Stay alive.
Yeah. So you divide them up into 4 groups. If Esau takes out 2 of the groups, he still has 2 more groups. So not everybody dies if they're all in one group. So he divides them up. If Esau meets one group and attacks it, the other groups can possibly escape. It's actually kind of smart. So then Jacob prayed, "O God of my grandfather Abraham, Isaac." So I guess he doesn't pray to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but because he is Jacob. "O Lord, you told me, return to my own land and to your relatives. And you promised me, I will treat you kindly. I am not worthy of all the unfailing love and faithfulness that you have shown to me, your servant. When I left home and crossed the Jordan River, I owned nothing except a walking stick. Now my household fills 2 large camps. O Yahweh, please rescue me from the hand of my brother Esau. I am afraid that he is coming to attack me along with my wives and children. But you promised me that I would surely treat you kindly. I will multiply your descendants until they become as numerous as the sands along the seashore, too many to count." So Jacob stayed where he was that night, and then he selected these gifts from his possessions to present to his brother Esau. And then all these gifts that are there. How much stuff is that? That's a lot of stuff. And so this isn't all he has. This is just what he selects to send ahead to Esau so that Esau doesn't get mad and come after his family and kill everybody. Because remember, up ahead, regardless of what that word is, you still have 400 men coming after you or coming toward you. So that's a lot of stuff as it is. And that may not even be half of what he owns. So he divided these animals, verse 16, into herds and assigned each to different servants. And then he told his servants, "Go ahead of me with the animals, but keep some distance between the herds." So he gave these instructions to the men leading the first group. "When my brother Esau meets you, he will ask, 'Whose servants are you, and where are you going? Whose animals are these?' You must reply, 'They belong to your servant Jacob, but they are a gift for his master Esau. Look, he is coming right behind you.'" Now, I looked at both of these words to see if there was anything curious in terms of Jacob trying to, sugarcoat or sweet tooth this, your servant Jacob and your master Esau. But there's really nothing there. It's kind of, Esau in terms of like a sir or lord. And Jacob is, he is the younger brother by a few seconds. There's really nothing there. So Jacob gave the same instructions to the second and third herdsmen and to all who followed behind the herds. You must say the same thing to Esau when you meet him. And be sure to say, look, your servant Jacob is right behind us. And so Jacob thought, I will try to appease him by sending gifts ahead of me. And when I see him in person, perhaps he will be friendly to me. And so the gifts were sent on ahead while Jacob himself spent the night in the camp. So I don't know when last time you read this was, but man, there's a lot of orchestrated stuff happening here for Jacob. And it's all in the sense of, I don't want to die and I don't want my family to die because I know how upset Esau is at me. Now, is it possible that Esau changed? Is it possible he still wasn't as angry? When I'm asking, is it possible? I'm not saying he is or not, but is it possible? So Jacob, all of these things he's doing is in anticipation that Esau is still the same guy and still feel the same way he did 25 years before. So he's done all this elaborate stuff to decrease Esau's anger and his desire and thirst for revenge over Jacob. Do you find that being a pretty normal human reaction? When we assume something about somebody within a relationship, how do we normally respond and act with the assumption that we have? We act based upon the assumption, right? If we think someone's angry with us, we approach them differently. If we think that they really, really like and appreciate us, we react differently. So much of relationships are oftentimes in the head. And for Jacob, that was the case here. So verse 22, and if you can read this part as if you've never read it before, because oftentimes as I hear people retell this, there seems to be a lot in the story that's not here. But somehow it's been put here. So during the night, Jacob got up and took his two wives, his two servant wives, and his 11 sons and crossed the Jabbok River with them. And after taking them to the other side, he sent over all his possessions. This left Jacob all alone in the camp. One of the things, why does Jacob think Esau is so upset? And I'm not like facetiously asking, why does he think Esau is so upset? Yeah. So what does that imply? And it may be a, like a, what's that? Yeah. So he actually recognizes 25 years later, man, I did him bad. He's got good reason to be really upset with me. And of course, as he left, Esau was coming after him to kill him. And so Rebekah sends him off. But Jacob knows what he did. And he realizes, all the stuff he's doing here is in recognition that Esau is not angry with emptiness. He's angry because he was terribly taken advantage of by Jacob and ultimately by Rachel. You kind of wonder how Esau and Rebekah's relationship was after Jacob takes off, if Esau even knew, what Rebekah's part was in any of this. So verse 24, this left Jacob all alone in the camp, and a man came and wrestled with him until the dawn began to break. And when the man saw that he would not win the match, he touched Jacob's hip and wrenched it out of its socket. And the man said, "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go unless what? I want a blessing." Sound familiar? That happened 25 years ago when he deceived his dad out of Esau's blessing.
That sounds a little peculiar.
Yeah,
Wrestle with this guy all night and then-
yeah, yeah. So we're going to try and walk through this a little bit and maybe unplug or set the stage a little differently than at least I know I'd always heard it growing up. So the man says, "Let me go." Jacob says, "I will not let you go until you bless me." "What is your name?" the man asked. He replied, "Jacob." "Your name will no longer be Jacob," the man told him. "From now on you will be called Israel," or Israel, "because you fought with God and with men and have won." "Please tell me your name," Jacob said. "Why do you want to know my name?" the man replied, and then he blessed Jacob there. Jacob named the place Peniel, which means the face of God. For he said, "I have seen God face to face, yet my life has been spared." The sun was rising as Jacob left Peniel, and he was limping because of the injury to his hip. Even today, the people of Israel do not eat the tendon near the hip socket because of what happened that night when the man strained the tendon of Jacob's hip. So there's some interesting stuff there about verse 32, but we'll leave that for another day. So tell me your thoughts about this. As you maybe haven't read this in a while, or maybe you have some Bible school stories that you remember. Tell me what you think about this whole story. Yeah. Who's the man? So what was maybe either implied or straight up said? At least I know for me growing up, there was an angel. Jacob wrestled with an angel. Angel's not there. Who was the dude? Don't know. And you know why we don't know? Why don't we know? Because it doesn't say. It's kind of like in John 8, whenever Jesus wrote on the ground, what did he write? Well, maybe he wrote love. Maybe he wrote kindness. Maybe he wrote, we don't know. And why do we not know? Because it doesn't say. We strictly, we straight up don't know. Yeah, human. Yeah, Adama. Yeah. So great question. And again, I remember the first time I brought this up, I got some weird looks. Adam and Eve are not their names. The word Adam means human. It's Adam or Adama. And Eve means, I think it's Eve. It's either Eve or Eden means, it's Eden means delight. Eve means life giver. And so Eve is the life giver. Adam comes from the dirt. You remember in Job, whenever Job essentially says, "From dust I came, and to dust I will return." So Adam is the Hebrew word for Adam, Adama, just means dirt. So Jacob wrestled with Adam, with Adama. He wrestled with dirt. Now, obviously, he didn't wrestle with the dirt. He wrestled with someone. And he wrestled with him until the break of dawn. And so when the man saw that he would not win the match, he touched Jacob's hip and wrenched it out of its socket. I was listening to a guy try and break this down, And if you pull out this part of this, which I find very interesting and curious, if you were going to and let's say this isn't metaphoric, okay? This happened. And when I say that, I don't mean I'm suggesting it didn't. I'm saying this happened. Jacob begins to limp. What would it take to unsocket a hip socket? What's that? A lot of strength. And where would you have to hit a person's anatomy to knock the hip out of its socket? What's that? I mean, you guys know the answer. Where would you have to hit a dude to knock his hip out of socket? Around the joint. So the inside of near the growing area. And you'd have to hit it pretty hard because you can't do it on the outside because that'd probably break the leg. So it's got to be near the growing area. And you got to hit it pretty hard to make that happen.
Text says touch. So
It does.
I understood that to mean that it was not a physical. He didn't do it just physically.
Okay. Right, right. But much like when you look at Genesis 18 and the three men that visited Abraham, we do know those were angels, but they were physical. They ate food. They talked. And Abraham didn't know they were angels. I don't know that he ever knew they were angels. And then in that story, it identifies one of those angels as Yahweh. So God comes down in flesh in Genesis 18 with two other angels, which is interesting that Yahweh is called an angel, Genesis 18. So here you have this man, and he and Jacob wrestle. And they wrestle how long? All night. I tell you, I stopped wrestling Ryan when he got to be about 14. One, because he cheated and it was no fun anymore. But, and he was playing basketball and getting into football, and I just couldn't do it anymore. And there's no way I'm doing that all night. I think we did for about 20 minutes, and then I was done. Wrestled all night. And not only did they wrestle, and I remember looking at the word touched, but I don't remember exactly what it means. And I've always assumed the touch, is kind of like an angelic touch, and in a miraculous sense, it messes up his hip. So I'll need to go back and look at that word. But his hip is wrenched out of his socket. One of the suggestions was as he hits that, and the place that he hits it, Jacob doesn't have any more kids after this. Well, he has Benjamin. So kids are done, which may imply this or that. What's that? It could be. It could be. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's true. His brother and making sure his family's safe and right. 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 Which I found that very interesting, that ultimately his entire family and all his possessions are on the other side. And he's by himself, doing this wrestling and this thing happening. Yeah. 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 You don't have all that mess. Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. And so this is when we find Jacob's name being changed to a deceiver, to one who wrestles with God. And if you notice here, Israel, El is the idea of might or power, which has also been seen as God. So one who fights or wrestles with God. And it's not so much a prophecy, but looking forward from the time Israel gets out of Egypt, what do they do with God? They wrestle. It's just a constant back and forth with God. Why have you done this? And why don't you do this and help us here? And oh, God, you're so wonderful and you're so amazing and thank you for helping us. Look, we're in this terrible position and you put us here, so fix it because this is stupid. And then you look at the book of Judges and it goes back and forth. So it's almost a constant wrestling, fighting with God as he and his family go through their life. I also found it interesting here that Jacob in verse 29, what does he ask of this man? What's your name? Why would that be important during this time? Not for us, but during this time. Names mattered. They had meaning to them. What is your name? Who are you? Where have you come from? Why are we doing this? So what was the man's response? Now again, this is not, at least it's not the word malak, for Hebrew for angel. This is a man, this is a dude. So his response was, why do you need to know my name? So Jacob named the place the face of God. For he said, I have seen God face to face, yet my life was spared. We could probably do an entire class just on that statement right there. Why would it surprise Jacob that he'd seen God face to face but lived? What's that? Okay. Yeah, yeah. Right. Right. Yeah, maybe so. Yeah.
Deal with Esau, he had to deal with God. He could not face the anger of Esau, so he wrestled with God.
Yeah. Yeah.
No matter how carefully planned he was going to attack the situation of Esau, if he has not been right with God,
Right.
it's going to be a lot harder to handle.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, that is. And as I read through this, there was a third person I think that Jacob had to deal with, which it may be kind of in conjunction with dealing with God, was himself. Because as I mentioned earlier, Jacob knows why Esau's so upset. It's not like, man, what are you so upset with me for? This is ridiculous. He knows. And so he's come to terms with the fact that, man, I was a jerk. I didn't just, take away his card or something. I took both of his blessings away. I just destroyed him. And so now dealing with that, and all this is happening before he actually meets Esau. Before the meeting takes place, all this stuff is happening. So when you look at verse 30, the idea, and maybe even the assumption, oftentimes we have is no one can see the face of God and live. Because when you look at Moses on the mountain, and he's going to see God, God has to, of course, put him in the cleft, put his hand over it, and then Moses can see the backside of God, but not his face. So here we have Jacob's saying. Now, again, I want you to notice here, and this is one of the kind of the cool things that I have, again, learned about Bible study is, in John 9, with the healing of the blind man, there's a statement in John 9 where they make the statement, God does not hear the prayer of a sinner. And we could make an entire theology about that. But who said that? Did God say that? Did the Holy Spirit say that? Some random dude said it, and Luke recorded it. So that's not theology. That's not accurate. That's just what somebody said. That's what their thoughts were. Their thoughts were, if you have an ailment, it's because of sin or your parents' sin. And if you are a sinner, God doesn't connect with you. Neither one of those are true, but that's what they thought. So here, God doesn't say this. Jacob says this. And he says, I have seen God face to face. My life has been spared. That doesn't mean that you can't see God face to face. It just simply means that Jacob here said that. And of course, we're not to Moses and the Mount Sinai. We're a long way away from that. Yeah.
I think that he might be saying that so that I recognize that I am not self-reliant anymore, that I am face to face with God now, and I can no longer, build on myself.
Yeah.
I'm surrendering completely
Yeah.
to the Lord God.
Yeah. Right.
Which is a big deal.
Yeah. 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 Well, it's kind of your foundation. And it also, I would imagine, which I didn't look into this, I just now thought of it, for the male, it's also reproduction. And so all of these things are happening. And Jacob's like, man, the sun's coming up. I'm still alive. I have wrestled with this dude. And what do you think he means by, and I'm asking this honestly because I couldn't find anything to satisfy me. What kind of blessing would Jacob be looking for from this random guy? Okay, maybe so. Maybe protection from Esau. And I'm just throwing it out there. But, for these folks this day, blessings were a pretty big deal, especially obviously within a family. And so notice here, they're not having a conversation. They're not having an argument. They're not doing some kind of bartering. They are wrestling. And it's intense wrestling. And how do we know it's intense? Because he takes his hip out of its socket. And then he tells him, hey, let me go. So the man tells Jacob, the sun's coming up, let me go. We're done. And what does Jacob say? No, we're not. You're going to bless me or we're going to keep going. And again, strangely enough, tell me what your name is. Why do you want to know my name? And so Jacob names the place not God's blessing or socket. He doesn't name it any of that stuff. What does he name it? I literally wrestled with, and I believe there it is the word Elohim. I wrestled with Elohim, the face of Elohim. I have seen Elohim face to face, and my life was spared. So, and we could spend a lot of time on their worldview of Elohims at this time, their worldview of gods, which is very different than ours today. So very possible for Jacob, if you wrestle with, come face to face with, you have any close interaction with an Elohim, you are dead because they are so powerful. And here he says, I have wrestled with this Elohim and my life has been spared. So he doesn't name the place wrestling. He doesn't name it blessing. He doesn't name it hip or socket, any of those things. He actually names it the face of God. Pen-el, the face of God, because he wrestled with God and he was able to come out of it okay. Yeah.
Israel shaking a hip socket. Obviously, Jacob told his story in such a way where they understood how serious this particular wrestle was.
Yeah.
And that they could
Yeah.
literally see the live from now on.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we
Right. They're living it. Yeah.
see it.
Yeah. And just a small thing here, because if that is the case, the reason why I say if that's the case, it's in parentheses, much like John 8, the story of the adulterous woman. It's probably not original. It was probably added later because it was a widespread story. The last 8 verses of Mark 16 is not original. So I don't know how original verse 32 is. And yet you have this narrative that went on for a long time that they don't eat they don't need the tender. You know, they don't do that, possibly because of this. And it was something that went on for supposed generations. So really, really interesting story. Let's see. Yeah. Struggles with Elohim. So real quick, has the second bell already gone off? Okay. So 33 verse 1, then Jacob looked up and he saw Esau coming with 400 men. And so he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 servant wives. He put the servant wives and their children at the front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. So what do you think about that? I just find it interesting. And so Jacob went on ahead, and he approached his brother. He bowed to the ground 7 times before him. And then Esau ran to meet him and embraced him, threw his arms around his neck, kissed him, and they both wept. So what do we say about Jacob's assumptions? Had Esau changed? Now, it could also be in some part because of these 4 waves that Jacob sent of gifts, you know, kind of being representative of Esau being aware of what he did, being apologetic, being understanding, et cetera, et cetera. And so when they finally do meet, the apology is accepted and they get together and weep, or it may have had nothing to do with that. And maybe, obviously, Esau's a different man. Esau looked at the women and children and asked, who are all these people with you? Those are what does he call them? The children that God has graciously given to me, or the children that Elohim has graciously given to me, your servant. Then the servant wives came forward with their children and bowed before him. Next came Leah, et cetera, et cetera. And what were all the flocks and the herds that I met as I came? Jacob said, they are a gift, my Lord, or sir. That is not the word Lord like kurios. It's just sir, to ensure your friendship. My brother, I have plenty. Keep what you have for yourself. Jacob insisted, no. If I found favor with you, please accept this gift. And what a relief to see your friendly smile. And then they continue on with this really, really interesting story. Yeah.
Israel, Jacob's family is going to become a huge part of history.
Right.
And Esau is not.
Right.
going to be that long.
Right.
And so to see this make up is a very, very important part because even today,
Yeah.
you know, religion comes out of Esau.
Right.
That does not see this as a reconciliation.
Yeah.
That's, hey, we're okay. You know,
Right.
Jacob and Esau did make up, they did create
Yeah.
a cohesive family, even though Jacob's family is going to be
Extremely large. Yeah. And prominent. Yeah. 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 Which could be a very interesting link if you connect this dot with Matthew 18, I think it is, that if you go to the altar and you have an issue with a brother, what are you supposed to do? Go fix it. Reconciliation, restoration, making sure that, you are on the same page as much as it's. And then you have Ephesians 6, Ephesians 3, maybe 4, that as much as it is possible with you, make peace, make harmony, make reconciliation. Yeah. So, we may take this story to the end, and then we will figure out other topics of study from there. So, thanks for your comments. We'll continue next Sunday.